Yeah, I confess, Father, I confess, 'cause I've been living wrong. I know.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be changing the brakes on this 2014 Nissan Altima. I already have it jacked up, and I also have a jack stand under the car, and I lowered the car onto the jack stand, but I like to leave the jack under there just for added support. If you don't have an impact, you go ahead and loosen the lugs before you jack it up. And if you're like me and you have an impact, you can just take them off while it's like this. Then you go ahead and you remove the wheel. Alright, after you take your wheel off and you set it aside, this is what you should be left with. The bolts on the back of the caliper here, and here, I believe they're 9/16. Alright, once you just kind of crack them loose, they just easily hand screw out. After you take the bolts out, you need to set the caliper aside. I like to put a 5-gallon bucket next to it. After I take it off, it leaves the pads in place, and you need to move the caliper out of the way. So I like to set it on the bucket. Sometimes it's still in the way, but alright. And there's 2 more bolts on the back that you have to take off to get the bracket off. If you turn the wheel a little bit, I turned it so I could get the impact to get these out. They were in there pretty tight. Those are the 7/8 bolts on the back of the caliper that hold the bracket to the rotor. Alright, now to take those 2 bolts off, this just comes out. And these pads, you can wiggle them free. Alright, so you got that off. Alright, and this is how I get them loose. I get to the edge that doesn't have a dust shield, and I just kick it. And the rotor comes right off. Set it aside, and then get your new rotor. And if you want to, you can take a second and kind of clean this up. I'm just going to use a little wire brush to get some of that rust off there. Takes all the dirt and debris off also, so it's not a bad idea. Alright, and now you're ready to put the new rotor on. Alright, I should have showed this before I stuck this on here. Actually, what I do is I spray a little bit of brake cleaner on like a rag, and I wipe off the rotor, because most of the time they put on some kind of oil to keep it from rusting. So it's always a good idea to clean them before you put them on. Alright, so you got your new rotor. Need some brake parts cleaner. Just kind of spray it on the rag. Just kind of wipe the rotor off. Takes any grease off or oil that they keep this, keep it from rusting. Alright, and after you put the rotor on, try not to touch it, especially the silver part, because that's where the pad is. You don't want to get any oils off your hands on it. And I screwed one lug nut on the bottom most posts, and it keeps the rotor from trying to fall off while we remount the caliper. Alright, I'm gonna use blue Loctite on these bolts that hold the caliper to the spindle. I don't like using red on this. I've had red pretty much fuse the caliper to the spindle, the bolt. Like I ended up breaking the head off trying to get it off, so now I use blue or the high temp one. It's just a little extra protection. These don't even look like they had any on there from the factory. Alright, so after you put the thread locker on, go ahead and tighten up the bolts to spec. Alright, you just take your new pads, go ahead and open them up. Try not to touch the material. Sometimes it really can't be avoided, but just pop them in. Normally I would change the hardware also, but these pads didn't come with hardware and it doesn't look too bad. Alright, next thing you gotta do is squeeze the caliper back into its hole. Alright, so basically whatever way you can get this to go back in. I actually can't find my large C clamp, which is usually what I use. I'm just gonna squeeze it back in, so I'm gonna use these and I'll have to lower it and tighten it again. And keep doing that until it's in, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Alright, and I like to grease anywhere the pads contact the caliper. They usually come with a little thing of brake grease. If not, you can get them at the parts store or on Amazon for a few bucks. Probably should have done this before, but you can only put it on the back of the brake pads. Just try to get it anywhere that they will be touching the caliper. Anywhere there could be friction. It doesn't take a ton. You don't want it heating up and running off and getting on your pad. Then we're going to reattach the caliper. This would help if you had the bolts already also. Go ahead and put a little thread locker on those too. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you just got to take that other lug off there that you spun on by hand to keep the rotor on. Stick the wheel back on. Tighten up the lug nuts. Pretty much just by hand. Put the car down and then torque them to 90 to 100 foot-pounds, somewhere in there. I don't know what Nissan calls for, but I usually put them in the mid-90s. And that's about it. And then you would do the exact same thing for the other side. I mean, I guess you could jack the whole front of the car and do both at once. But yeah, anyway, I hope this helps you out. There'll be another video for the back ones. Anyway, I would appreciate it if you subscribed. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you around. Oh yeah, one more thing. I almost forgot. When you're tightening up the lugs, make sure you do it in a star pattern, like top and then bottom, and then right, then left, and then the remaining one. I've actually put a wheel on before and it wasn't seated properly. I put it down. I realized something was wrong before I drove on it, but if I wouldn't have been paying attention, you know, it could have been serious. It wasn't pulled flush to the rotor, so I probably would have lost the wheel. So it's just something to keep in mind. Make sure you're safe.